You know, after this whole coronavirus thing, it made me realize that in spite of our semi-technological advancement, we're still pretty much back in the caveman days when it comes to social relationships or political governance. We're still ruled by the greedy, the unconscious, and the egotistical. And it reminded me of a talk given by Terence McKenna where he talks about if you're a person of any kind of curiosity, you're wondering why are we here, where did we come from, and where are we going? And that the natural response is to look to the cultural database for your answers, whether it's the political system, the religious institutions, psychology, or science, and that you can live and die within these institutions if you choose to. But if you have any kind of intellectual filter at all, you quickly realize that they're nothing more than half-completed stories told around the campfire, that you're not going to find the answers from your cultural database, from the society around you. You're only going to find it within, the Spirit of God within, in getting quiet places like this, walking meditation and prayer. And I don't follow his method of getting there. I strongly discourage that. But you can find the greater answer of why we're here, where we're going, and what we're doing in the Spirit within. So check it out. This will pretty much explain why we're going through what we're going through. And here he is, Terence McKenna.
I should say, I guess, a little bit about myself. I grew up in a small town in Colorado under extraordinarily ordinary circumstances. And I began to pursue the nexus of concerns that clusters around the question, what are we? Where did we come from? And where are we going? And as a 14-year-old, 16-year-old, when these questions first form in your mind, a reasonable response is to seek the cultural database. Surely there are answers to these questions. Who are we? Where did we come from? And where are we going? Well, if you have any kind of intellectual filter at all, you quickly can satisfy yourself that our best efforts are nothing more than half-completed stories told around the campfire. We don't actually know what our predicament is. And my personal journey, if you want to put it that way, lay through a successive series of I almost said disappointments, but awakenings could be another word, as I realized that nobody has their finger on what's going on. These religions that are so freighted with their own pomposity are no better than inspired guesses. And science works its miracles by turning its enterprise into a kind of parlor game confined to the category matter and energy. So you can live and die inside these intellectual structures if you choose to. But people of curiosity, people of unusual or traveled circumstance usually find themselves unsatisfied with the conventional answers. In other words, all these things you might cling to, democratic ideals, Hasidism, Marxism, Freudianism, all of these things are exposed as simply quaint cultural artifacts, painted masks and rattles assembled by people of good intent, but clearly not great grasp of the situation. Well, I thought that process of deconstruction of cultural reality would end in a kind of liberation of cynicism, where you become sort of really street smart. Nobody can put anything over on you. You've been there. You've done that. It turns out that existential phase, which I reached at about age 18, is itself simply a place along the way, and that persisting then with pushing, I began to see that there was a landscape of meaning, but it was not the meaning that I had ever been told. And this was fairly shocking to me, because part of my intellectual journey had been through the psychology of Carl Jung. So I was very prepared for the idea that all dreams, all religious mythologies are seamlessly connected to each other under the surface. And liberalism takes the generous position that everybody has a piece of the action. You know, the Buddhists understand something, the Taoists understand something, the Kabbalists understand something. I was getting a different message. I was getting the message that nobody understands anything, that the entire cultural enterprise is 180 degrees cockamamie to the truth, that we have it absolutely ass backwards, that to date the enterprise of thinking has moved us radically away from understanding anything. And I suppose this is the proper place in all this to make my standard disclaimer against squirreliness. There's a lot of squirreliness in this world, a rising tide of it. Some of it has been fomented not far from where we sit this evening. And so as sanctioned paradigms break down, science and religion, which certainly are breaking down, into that vacuum rushes an incredibly exotic menagerie of intellectual freakery of all sorts. What is science selling? Science is selling the idea that some time ago, for no reason, the earth sprang from nothing in a single moment. Well, now, whatever you may think about that idea, notice that it's the limit case for credulity. Do you understand what I mean? I mean, whether it's true or not, it's the most outlandish explanation for reality possible for the human mind to conceive of. And that's step one with science. So what does this do? What is the consequence of this scientific worldview? A progressive marginalization and de-emphasis on what it means to be a human being. Problem is that it runs completely counter to the primary datum, to use a philosophical buzzword, the primary datum. And what is the primary datum? It's the felt presence of immediate experience. In other words, being here now is the primary datum. And it doesn't tell you that this is a series of accidents, and that you are irrelevant, and that your pain is not pain, and that your hope is not hope. It tells you something else. It tells you this counts. Somehow it matters. I matter. My life matters, my family, the human enterprise, this planet, its biota, this matters. It all matters. Meaning is intrinsic as a primary datum, and yet it's denied by the philosophy which rules this planet and sets its agenda. How this happened, we can talk about tomorrow. It's an interesting story of historical malapropisms and bad calls and lost opportunities and just bonehead stupidity at critical junctures. But this evening what I want to evoke for you is it isn't a random walk toward nowhere. The things that matter are imbued with uniqueness, and that uniqueness is imparted by this invisible medium that science, in order to function, has had to deny. That's what it basically comes down to.